Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for choosing this session. You will be rewarded. My name's Andrew Thomas. I'm Director of the Philanthropy Company. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to moderate and introduce this session. Over the next 45 minutes, we are going to hear about the Small Businesses United programme that has been operated over the last few years, over the last 3 years actually, by a combination of eBay and the EFL and its 72 clubs. Fascinating enough topic in general anyway, but as an Everton fan, it's actually very resonant for two reasons. One is, I suspect we might become one of the 72 quite soon. And if that does take place, then we may well be relying on eBay to actually find a buyer for the club. So after we hear from Alex in a moment, who's going to give a presentation about the programme overall, Nicky St John of the EFL and also Faisal Alani from eBay are going to join us on stage for some questions and answers. Let me introduce Alex Brown, who is Head of Sport and Entertainment at EssenceMediaCom and boasts a 20-year career covering all sorts of different clients and brands, including HSBC, Heineken, Toyota, and as I say, many more beyond that. So we're up against it in terms of time, so I'm going to skip off, let you do your business, and then we will reconvene on stage afterwards. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here. Congrats to the organisers for getting us all together. Thank you for choosing this session. If you want to sneak out now because you think you want to talk, go and listen to the Levelling Up one, then I won't be offended if you duck out right now. So as Andrew said, I'm Alex Brown. I head up the Sports and Ents team at EssenceMediaCom. Our sole objective or our goal as a business is to drive cultural relevancy and breakthrough growth for our clients through identifying, securing, and executing and activating partnerships such as the one I'm going to talk you through now. For me, this is a bit of a labour of love. It's been 2 years that we've been working on it, another year or so in the offing to get it all up and running. But it has been such a hugely enjoyable campaign for all of us working on it, including Nicky and Faisal and all the respective teams. I've been really ambitious with the number of slides, so I'm going to be rattling through it, but I'm going to try and give you a bit of context to how it came about, a little bit of the market context, the audience we were trying to reach, and then a bit of flavour and colour of exactly what it actually involved. And then obviously happy to take questions at the end. So I'm going to start with an apology. This word should be banned, but I'm afraid I have to use it. But it was COVID. And the coronavirus, which obviously transformed all of our lives and transformed the lives of many brands out there, including eBay. For eBay, a business that relies on its 250,000 small businesses, it was a hugely troubling, challenging time. It was estimated that small businesses were going to lose £126.6 billion from the impact of COVID. And it was critical, therefore, for eBay, who are a business supported by those, to help them thrive and survive. And therefore, we looked to try and drive meaningful change in those communities where those small businesses operated. To take you back, in early 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, eBay's business was actually looking quite healthy. Awareness was high, no surprise. Most of the people in this room, I'm sure, all know about eBay. And people were using us, but again, no surprise there. Lots of people trapped at home, working from home, using online sites. So on the surface, things look great. But as part of the work that we were doing at EssenceMediaCom, which is a cultural navigation process, we started to look at actually what was happening under the surface. And we took two measures, or I've pulled out two measures. There's a presentation behind this of about 60 slides, but there's a couple of slides here that just show the impact of eBay versus a couple of their competitors. And you can see a huge difference when it came to ad awareness and also, most importantly, cultural attention, because how a brand performs when it comes to cultural attention and how it resonates with the audience is where it will make a shift in terms of market share, consideration, and ultimately usage. And eBay was dramatically lagging behind its competitors. And ultimately were less relevant. Again, I pulled out just one graph here, but you can see in terms of the meaningful index that we use a lot at MediaCom. Again, that kind of functional, social, and emotional needs of the audience, we found that there wasn't a connection between eBay's audience and what they were trying to deliver. And digging deeper, we found that consumers weren't talking about eBay, they weren't thinking positively about eBay, and they weren't feeling positive about eBay. And I think probably a part of this comes down to what eBay stood for perhaps 2 or 3 years ago. I think a lot of people, if we did a poll in this room, would think of them as an auction website. Some would think of them as a buying and reselling website. I use it to flog my kids' golf clubs and so on. And therefore, that sort of confusion around what they actually stood for was perhaps meaning that consumers didn't think positively about the brand. And you can see, again, I've removed the names of the brands, but all of their competitors on the graphs. You can see eBay, starting to lag behind when it came to consumer sentiment. And we know also that is important because when people think positively about a brand, when they talk positively about a brand, we see a shift in market share. And on the left, I've used a different sector, the confectionery sector, but and actually the graph goes back a few years, but you can look at someone like Maltesers in the top right of that graph. When people talk about them positively, their market share grows. And again, on the right, in terms of drivers of frequency, clearly important for an online brand like eBay and people using it, it comes down to things like buzz and trust and consideration. And therefore, we knew that eBay was underperforming in being talked about from a buzz perspective, from a word of mouth perspective, and therefore searches and usage of the brand was therefore declining, although it looked, as I say from the first graph, that awareness and usage was high. So we knew that this could negatively impact eBay's business, and therefore needed to look at what we could do to address that. This is what the culture gap looks like. Again, I've removed competitor names, but you can see in terms of the bubble size is about buzz, and then obviously in terms of ad awareness and word of mouth, you can see where they were positioned versus some of their competitors back at the beginning of 2021. So a pretty stark challenge for us to take on, and something that we wanted to tackle with the team at eBay. So ultimately we helped them close the cultural gap, we made them more culturally relevant, and we boosted their brand and business objectives. Now, the market context at the time, we knew, as I said just now, SMBs were struggling. 61% of small business owners reported that they had serious financial concerns. We knew that 48% of local and micro businesses were losing more than 20% of their revenues. And we knew that for eBay, where 90% of their purchases come from small businesses, they were reliant on these businesses performing and thriving and reviving after COVID. But we also knew that football was struggling. 5,000 clubs were perhaps at risk of bankruptcy at a local grassroots level, and you can see the number there from a socioeconomic impact on grassroots football. So the two things combined, we knew there was an opportunity for eBay and quite a natural fit for them to go in and help their small businesses, but also local football clubs. But we also knew during COVID that the power of community, the power of your neighbours was becoming stronger. And there's just a few stats here in terms of people's feeling and sentiment about how they felt about their community. We all had to look much more inward during COVID. We were locked in our houses, not locked in our houses. We were stuck in our houses. We were working from home, and therefore we were looking at the local vicinity rather than perhaps on a more macro level. So we knew that there was an opportunity to tap into that local community spirit, that more neighbourly feel, and make a change. So that was the sort of setup, the market and business context. So how do we go about addressing that? Again, the dual challenge of local football clubs and local businesses created an opportunity for eBay. They were clearly a natural fit in this environment. They were perfectly positioned to be the right brand to help those local communities out and help those local football clubs out. And also historically, we know that football has been driven by businesses in the past. So quite a natural link and an opportunity for eBay to supercharge that link. We also knew, nothing new here, but football is a 365-day cultural relevancy driver. It's a driver of that horrible phrase of water cooler conversations on a Monday morning where we're talking about our results from the weekend. I'm an Arsenal fan, so I didn't have a great weekend. But we also know, and more importantly on the right, local football clubs are actually more than just football clubs in their communities. They host weddings, they host conferences, they host all sorts of events. And therefore, the football on a Saturday may be one part of it, but the other element, and particularly at the local grassroots level, is that football clubs are pillars of their community. They create community spirit. So, there's local relationships that exist there, and we wanted to jump in and supercharge that. So we set about democratizing the game and giving it back to local communities and businesses. We aimed basically to hand over rights and a platform for new businesses in a new kind of sponsorship deal that benefited the grassroots of the game and those SMBs that were powered by eBay. So we provided a platform for local businesses and clubs to have exposure through this activation. We made sure that it was underpinned by a clear position within the football space. We pulled out just 3 things here that were important for eBay at the time. Grassroots football budgets, I've already mentioned, were shrinking. We knew that Premier League clubs had underlying financial agendas. If you think back to the European Super League at the time with 12 European clubs trying to break away from others, there's a lot of money at the top of the game, less so trickling down perhaps to local grassroots. And we also know that player and the fan lifestyle gap is widening. And there's a lot of flash Harrys at a Premier League level flying around in their fast cars. At the local level, it's completely different. And those 3 things went completely against what eBay stands for and what their business is based on, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. So we created a unified platform, basically, for eBay's role in football and their positioning, to give UK communities a platform in football to power their SMBs again, and to give local people, communities and SMBs a way to maximise and capitalise on the power of football and bring joy back to their daily lives. And the objectives of the programme were clear, all about sort of driving positive word of mouth, which I've talked about, the impact that can have on a brand, the opportunity to drive positive PR, interest and engagement, but also drive consideration and making it from use to choose. So people would actually seek out eBay and look to use the business and all of their SMBs. So the campaign was aiming ultimately to drive cultural relevancy across these 3 key pillars. So that's where we got to Small Businesses United. Our idea was simply to take the most powerful sponsorship vehicle of football in the world and use it to revive eBay's small businesses and, in turn, the brand itself. We know that football sponsorships are too often the preserve of the big clubs, the big brands, those with the big money, and we wanted to ultimately put the soul back into local football and their communities. So we created we think it's the world's first micro-sponsorship platform. But we also knew that eBay just diving into football would be very strange. We needed credibility, we needed authenticity, we needed a partner and a platform that would help us provide that reach and scale. And that was where the EFL came in. Now, with apologies to Nicky, we actually started looking at the FA to begin with. They're the guardians of the game. They're the umbrella governing body for over 20,000 small football clubs. They're affiliated, obviously, from an elite all the way through to a grassroots level. But we knew when we started looking into that, there was going to be a challenge from a resource perspective. I mean, we would need ultimately unlimited resources to start managing over 8, 10, 12, 15,000 clubs. And obviously with that, a massive, large check, which created some problems. So we started looking around. We ignored the Premier League for all the reasons I've mentioned. A lot of their fans tend to be more global. And we started looking at the EFL, who, from assessment and from evaluation, were the perfect partner. They are a national organisation, but with very much local relevance. They have 72 clubs, which I'll talk about in a moment, that are absolutely perfect in their local communities for what we wanted to achieve with eBay. So we partnered with the EFL and looked to try and build a meaningful connection with those clubs and ultimately into the local communities. I've mentioned, but the USP for the EFL was that they are in every community of the UK, but they also bring with it a huge amount of scale. So you can see from some of the stats here, the actual the relevance and the meaningfulness of the EFL as an organisation. and the influence they have on a huge proportion of the audience and communities of this country. And through the partnership that we signed with the EFL, we were able to access matchday branding across all 72 clubs, non-matchday branding, and also central rights that were owned and provided to eBay by the EFL. So content opportunities, player opportunities, social and digital opportunities. So it created a network from centre out to local, and then meant we were able to upweight that sort of support via central management. Therefore, it meant less resource for my team, for the EFL team, and for eBay's team, but also the retention of that national relevance and local reach. So we still benefited from perhaps what we thought the FA would give us, but in a far more tight and simplistic way, with the EFL as the partner at the heart of it. And as you can see from this map, as I said, 72 clubs, all the pillar of their local communities. We've not got a stat that can back this up, sadly, but we're pretty sure that if you asked those people that are at a Stoke City or a Bristol City match day, that they've probably only travelled 5 to 10 miles, whereas, as I mentioned earlier, some of the Premier League clubs are attracting fans flying in from India and China and the US and so on and so forth. So this was a really critical part of what we wanted to achieve with the EFL. And then we just love a challenge at EssenceMediaCom, so we decided to extend it a little bit further. I've talked about the role that EFL provided us in terms of centralised delivery resource and also that credibility and authenticity. We know that the EFL clubs provide the amplification vehicle and the activation opportunities, but then we wanted to go one step further. So we added to that local grassroots clubs that we really wanted to help out and that I talked about at the beginning of this. So we actually started linking up some of eBay's small businesses with local clubs in their areas. So Cheshire's Chess, for example, sponsored the Marlow FC girls team. Fish for You started sponsoring the Plymouth Warriors, Power Sheds and the Bradford Disability Football Team, and so on and so forth. So we put together these linked partnerships between eBay's small businesses and local clubs. And then those businesses also benefited with matchday branding and opportunities via the EFL clubs. So it was a kind of hybrid of local EFL clubs and then local grassroots clubs. Very complicated, but one that we felt delivered on the objectives that we wanted to achieve. And here's just a few examples of some of the branding that we did across the EFL matches. And this was the first time that we've actually delivered, or the EFL have delivered 72 different creatives at their 72 different clubs. So from LEDs to perimeter boards to program adverts to match day, to big screens on match day, every single club had a tailored business around it. So a huge undertaking and something that delivered huge amounts of impact and reach for those local businesses. So to activate, we wanted to make sure that small businesses were at the heart of everything we did, and we wanted to shine a light on those grassroots clubs and those local businesses whilst using the power of the EFL and those rights that we've secured through that partnership. From a media perspective, we were very targeted in terms of who we chose to work with, but we also ensured that every media partner had a specific role. So we started working with ITV and sponsored the regional sports reports so that there was frequency on every single ITV news report that was talking about eBay's local businesses. With Sky Sports, we used their credibility within the football space to start telling longer form content and longer form storytelling opportunities around actually what we were trying to construct and deliver with the EFL. With the likes of Lad Bible, She's a Baller, it was about using their credibility and reach into a new audience so that there was different content, different assets, and different frequency of message that would continually push what we were trying to achieve through the Small Businesses United programme. And ultimately, altogether, provided reach and scale. This is just a very quick snapshot of one of the adverts that was produced by Sky Sports.
What's going on, people? It's your boy Addy Barak Femwa, aka The Beast, and I'm here on behalf of eBay to give power back to local communities. On behalf of eBay, the local business Power Sheds, this is your new kit.
I'm sure our guys will love playing in it.
Oh, there's a beast in goal. I met my match. You said you've been coming here since you was 3, you and your dad. What, are you going to be watching more, scoreboard or your sign?
I guess it depends if we're winning or losing.
So just a very quick snapshot and example. That obviously built out, as you can see here, to fuller episodes on skysports.com and a specific hub that we had to house all of the content. we took the media amplification one step further as well by delivering localized messaging on out of home and digital out of home. So we took over 512 screens within about a mile or two of all of the EFL grounds. So, and apologies for the low-res images here, but it just gives you a sense of how we tailored, again, everything around the specific EFL clubs, whether that be Fulham or Stratford, all of the different clubs around the UK. I mentioned the challenge of perhaps bringing together 72 local businesses and 72 local grassroots clubs. But we actually found a partner called Ralu, who were a tech platform actually not specifically designed for what we used it for. But it meant that we had basically an eBay white-labeled, an eBay-owned platform where local clubs could upload projects. In this instance, I think it's Bradford City, but they uploaded what they wanted, in this case changing rooms, redecoration and refurb, and then the local business would receive branding and opportunities. And the two entities effectively worked together. So there was a set number of points they had to achieve, and that was achieved by people watching videos, sharing messages on social media, and other such marketing amplification. And if they reached the number of points, then the money was released from eBay to refurb their program. Their changing rooms. So it was driving a direct link, but it meant that all the hassle, all of the legwork was done by a tech platform that we worked with. But clearly the EFL part of the activation and the partnership with the EFL was a huge investment for eBay and a large part of their marketing budget for every year. So we wanted to make sure that we maximise the opportunities that the EFL provided us. I'm going to pull out just a few here and give you a very, very quick snapshot of what we delivered. So this first example, Together Supporting Communities, was one of the big reasons why we actually chose the EFL as a partner. This is an existing initiative by the EFL and its clubs as part of the EFL's Week of Action. And eBay were able to partner with the EFL and start to give out tickets, rewards and incentives across the EFL clubs to some of their existing initiatives. So you can see on screen here, there's a snapshot of a video around Blackpool City and all of the stuff that they're doing in the local community. So we sent players along on behalf of eBay to give out tickets. We actually just distributed 2,880 tickets across the space of about a 2-week window for local businesses and local communities. So a really nice way of bringing the two together. The next example is Community Champions, which was a new thing that we delivered this year, the second year of the partnership. This was to celebrate the cultural relevancy, but also the magic of derby days. And there's obviously a number of derbies that take place over the course of an EFL season. In this instance, we picked Sutton versus Wimbledon, massive local derby in South London. And we then linked that to 4 local clubs who came together on the day for an afternoon of kind of fun skill challenges, but also matches to see who could be crowned the community champions. So a really nice way of linking, again, the small businesses together with local football clubs, but actually through the power of what the EFL were able to deliver us. And then through the EFL contract, we have opportunities from a content perspective. So just an example here of Ben Foster, the job swap opportunity. So we got Ben Foster to pop down to some of the eBay small businesses involved in the program and the campaign, and he would try out different jobs. So here he is in a barber's in Bristol, popping along to see the small business owner and trying to cut some hair, which went drastically wrong. Top right, he went along and met a small business on eBay that makes honey and sells via eBay. So he was dressed up as a beekeeper and got stung all day. So we had a lot of fun with it, and it was an opportunity to reach a new audience. But again, at the heart of it, and I keep repeating myself, but at the heart of it was the small business being linked with the football club. And then across everything that we did from an EFL rights perspective was about rewarding local businesses. So giving away lots of tickets, player meet and greets, using the EFL trophies, all being designed to reward eBay small businesses for signing up to the programme. So, the Papa John's Trophy recently, or the Carabao Cup final, eBay small businesses had the opportunity to get along and sample the atmosphere, as well as to their local club as well. So the Bristol City, the small businesses in Bristol have had tickets at Bristol City all season. So a really nice opportunity and a way of rewarding those small businesses. And then we thought we'd go one step further. As I say, we love a challenge at EssenceMediaCom, but we thought we'd take over one of the cultural high spots of any football season, which is the January transfer window. Now, this wasn't directly linked to the EFL partnership, but any football fan in the room will know that there's a huge amount of speculation that happens around January as to which club is going to be signing which player. And we thought it'd be fun to try and sign some football legends on eBay. So we went searching for some high-profile footballers. We got hold of Roberto Carlos, World Cup winner from Brazil, and Eni Aluko, one of the leading caps appearances for England. So we put it out on eBay, an opportunity to sign these legends for your club, your local club. All you had to do was sign up. Stick £5 in the pot, and at the end of the transfer window, we would select the clubs where they would play. So over the course of the month of January last year, in 2022, we started building all the noise and crescendo around the campaign. Clearly, Roberto and Eni were heavily involved on their own channels, but also we put it out via Sky Sports. They did a bit of a mick take in terms of who was going to be signing for which local clubs as a TV advert. We worked with TalkSport to keep driving frequency and scale, and a whole host of other media touch points to ensure that the campaign built from January, from the start of January to then obviously deadline day itself, when the announcement was made as to where Roberto and Eni would play. And they ended up Roberto ended up at Bull in the Barn, a pub team near Shrewsbury, and Eni ended up playing for Pevensey and West Ham FC down near Portsmouth. So huge opportunity for those clubs, and again, reinforcing that message of supporting local communities. And then the campaign kind of took off on its own. So people were starting to comment on Roberto Carlos signing for different clubs, Eni perhaps turning up at the local club, and people were commenting on their own back. The horrible phrase, it went viral. And then the day itself, when Roberto turned up at Bull in the Barn near Shrewsbury, we weren't able to release the location in advance. Clearly, from a security perspective, we didn't want tens of thousands turning up to try and gate crash it, but a few fans did find out where it was and did turn up, and a huge day of activity with Roberto down there. Didn't sadly score one of his trademark free kicks, but did manage a penalty, so all good. And Cammy was down there comparing on the day, and clearly couldn't let Roberto go home without a quick pint in the local pub for the team that he played for. So a lot of fun, but also clearly with a significant message at its heart around supporting local communities and ramping up the support for local businesses. Any good partnership, and the first session this morning was talking very much about measurement and evaluation of this, but we've worked with Kantar and YouGov over the last 2 years to make sure that we're consistently measuring and evaluating the partnership, and we're making an impact. And I suppose starting with the most important people here, the small businesses that we set out to help and ensure that they thrived and revived after COVID. This is a quote from Chris Loader, one of the small businesses that was linked with Fleetwood Town. I won't read it out, you can read it yourselves, but it just gives you a sense of the opportunity that is there for all these small businesses. He knows that he's actually impacting his sales in terms of best filter, best match suggestions. And I love the bit at the start where he says, like, who gives things away for free? Well, that's effectively what eBay did for their small businesses and started to make a real difference for people like Chris and his local business. The second set of people that we perhaps set out to help were the local grassroots teams. Again, a quote here from Dave Horrock, chairman at Fletcher Moss Rangers, just gives you a sense of the importance and also the impact that we've had on some of those local grassroots teams. And through our Kantar research, we've also started to develop that authentic voice within our target audience of online shoppers, but also football fans. And you can see some of the stats here in terms of what the activity is starting to do in terms of people's sentiment and those objectives I talked about at the start around what we wanted to achieve for eBay. And then importantly, the impact it's had on eBay's own business. So you can see here, and these are actually stats that are a little dated now, but they were from about the first 6 to 8 months of the partnership. So you can see in terms of purchase intent, off the charts, ad awareness, that increase of word of mouth that I talked about at the start around what we were trying to achieve really making a significant difference for eBay, and I suppose generally making them more culturally relevant. I haven't got a slide in here, but it did start to then open up the doors for some of the other partnerships that you'll have seen that eBay have been doing in the last couple of years, things like the Love Island partnership last summer, which made a huge difference from a pre-love fashion point of view. Their sponsorship of Pimp My Ride, anyone my age will remember that back in the 1990s, 2000s, huge program, but that came back last summer with eBay as sponsors. And so it started to roll on in terms of eBay's own business, in terms of what they're trying to achieve, and in terms of making them culturally relevant again, and more importantly, a loved brand. But we are still learning. Nicky, Faisal and I were laughing this morning. It feels like a long, long time ago that we signed the partnership, and we've learned a huge amount over the last 2 years. I've pulled out 4 here. I don't think there's anything hugely groundbreaking for any sponsorship or partnership practitioners in the room, but we've certainly taken on an awful lot over the last 2 years, and I think number one would be being very focused on your core message. We've perhaps slightly overcomplicated it at points, and we had to pull back in season 2 around actually what we wanted to get out there as the key message around those small businesses that we wanted to unite and the grassroots that we were trying to deliver. We've consistently tried to review, learn and adapt our strategy. So from season 1 to season 2, we started looking at different ways to use our content, which different media partners we wanted to work with, for example. Collaboration has been absolutely key to this. At the heart of everything we're doing is working very closely with the EFL and the eBay teams. So all 3 of us, agency partners, the rights holder and brand, all working in unison. It's never us at EssenceMediaCom coming up with the ideas and taking it to the EFL and eBay. It's definitely a collaborative process, which I think has been really critical. And also, we did have to admit at points that we, again, point number 1, I suppose, overcomplicating it, but we actually had to be unafraid, I suppose, to make changes. And so some of our branding shifted. You might have seen in some of the earlier shots, the video, there was some old style branding, and we actually revamped that and brought it up to date. We changed it. I don't know quite why we decided to, but we had to make that change. So we did basically the same process twice, where we had 72 different creatives going out to 72 different clubs. So a fairly huge undertaking. I hope that's been useful and insightful and informative. But I'm just going to end with a quick video that perhaps wraps it all up.
Football, the beautiful game. A national passion born out of local businesses and communities.
From the keener workers in industry come the great professional footballers.
How times have changed. Small businesses have been priced out of the sport.
The takeover is now passed. It's now owned by the Saudi-backed consortium.
Step forward, eBay, a marketplace for 340,000 small UK businesses. COVID had ripped many of them apart, ruining countless livelihoods in the process. So eBay took football back to its roots to help small businesses get back on their feet. Introducing Small Businesses United, a team like no other. The world's first microsport sponsorship program allows small business across the UK to sponsor their local football teams with branding on shirts, in matchday programs, and around grounds, all funded by eBay. And to make it truly accessible to all, we created a tech platform in partnership with Ralu that allowed any local club to upload what they needed funds for, and any small business to apply to support them in return for sponsorship. To give the campaign scale and credibility, we worked with the English Football League, ITV Regional Sports, and Sky Sports, with some impressive results to match. Ad awareness up by 25% in the first few weeks of the activation. We also got people talking, increasing positive word of mouth by 23%. Purchase intent doubled. But this is a long-term plan with a long-term ambition, with 140 small businesses involved so far and many more to come.
It's quite humbling, really, when you see an organisation that wants to help grassroots organisations, help kids. I'm a little bit embarrassed because I get very...
Nah, man, I get emotional. That's Fletcher Moss Rangers.
Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. So I reckon we've probably got about 9 minutes of injury time to field some questions. Just coming up on stage is Nicky St John, who leads the partnerships team at the EFL, and Faisal Alani, who is leading the social content and brand side of eBay. So welcome both of you. As I say, we've got about 8 or 9 minutes, I think. 10, we've got a whole 10. Sorry, there's been additional time.
Sorry, I obviously went on far too long.
No, it's absolutely fine. And anyway, even if we eat into lunch, literally,
I was told we could.
We're going to rely on your connection with Papa John's to bail us out. So. Just a quick question for me to kick off, actually, was which of you is responsible for the name of the programme? Did it come easily? Can anyone remember?
Well, that's probably something actually I should put up as a learning. We called it Small Businesses United because we wanted to make sure that we got across the fact that it was local grassroots clubs and local businesses, but it started to get called Small Business United and people started to get very confused about that. So not sure we should be shouting about taking the credit for that, but yeah, I don't know who came up with the name, but it got very confusing. I think we've landed it eventually, Small Businesses United.
Absolutely. I'll ask a question from the audience in just a second, but Nicky, a lot of moving parts there. What was during a lot of it during COVID? What was the thing that kept you awake at night in terms of?
It was the most difficult part was year one because the partnership didn't get signed till quite late on, and the season was about to start. So doing 72 different messages across all the clubs was difficult to do quickly for the season starting. And we didn't get all clubs done by the start of the season because there was a lot of back and forth with the small businesses as well, which Faisal could touch on. But what works well for us is because we've got a football services department and we manage all our creative. It comes into our team, we pass it to football services and then they manage it with the 72 clubs. So we've got a really robust process in place, but normally it's one creative that goes across 72 clubs. So you've got 72 different. It can be pretty logistical, a bit of a logistical nightmare, but we got there in the end.
Yeah. Great. I mean, for us, if you think about these businesses, some are fairly well established. They have a marketing team, but others were, a couple of people in their kitchen, selling goods. And then we'd tell them about the program and ask them to supply a logo and some blurb. And I had one business owner, he said, well, my son's really good at paint on the computer. He could probably mock up a logo. And I was like, you've got to understand, this is going to go on a giant screen in the stadium. So working with all these businesses and getting them to understand the scale of what we were trying to achieve and working with the EFL and EssenceMediaCom to achieve that, it was, and this was during lockdown. So all these conversations were on Zoom and on phone, not in person, it was a wonderful challenge.
Have we got any questions at the audience? There you go. Great, thank you.
I was really interested that you, in terms of all the people who are partnering with you, it wasn't just people who would actually use eBay. For instance, there were like fish and chip shops and pubs. What was the decision-making process there? That it was it just any small business, and therefore you wanted to sort of get the positive from that, or was that a conscious decision?
So the challenge was, how do we help local businesses? That was I was having breakfast with my kids when our VP called me and he said, people see us as an American global company when we actually help hundreds of thousands of businesses. And the figures that Alex had on the screen, 3 months in the pandemic, we added, I think, 70 to 80,000 small businesses because they had no means of selling. So we were quite flexible on who we were helping because, a local business helping their community didn't have to be restricted by, how it would help eBay, but how it would help the community. And, when you talk to someone about a local business, they don't think of what, most local businesses actually do. Most of them are resellers and so on. They think about the local chip shop, the barbers, and the problem was that people were seeing these businesses close during that period. So in order to have an impact and help these local communities feel like we were supporting them, which we were, but we hadn't ever talked about it, we had to open the gates and let people, let these businesses have a go. And as part of that support, when they joined the EFL program, it didn't end there. We also helped them promote their businesses. We helped them with marketing. We gave them business advice. We linked them up to other businesses in their local area where they could speak to and get help to help them accelerate their sales. And a lot of them were going online for the first time. So that was a really big undertaking from us to help them grow. So yeah, we had to be flexible.
And then just to add to that, the clubs were really keen to build the relationships out further than what was actually contractual or part of the asset delivery. So there's been a legacy piece as well, where the clubs have then continued the relationship with the small business once it's then moved on to another small business. We had some of the charities that paired up with Oxford United. We had a hospice, and that's continued as the relationship went on.
Go just up to middle towards the back there.
I found that very interesting, that last comment. What's that done for the value of your rights, do you think?
By giving it to small businesses?
Yeah, and the continued relationship with the local businesses.
So with the clubs, it then passes back to them to then build those relationships. So we will still have our central relationship with eBay, but that's why a lot of the clubs actually got really engaged with the partnership, because they could see longevity in it. When we first introduced the small businesses to the clubs, they wanted to invite them down for the opening day of the season, make a big deal of them, announce them over the tannoy. So they were already starting to see, what could we try and get out of this relationship going forward? And we do still need to do a bit of a tracking and recording element to see how many of those have gone on as the years have gone on, but there was definitely that keenness from the clubs to try and expand it out with just the eBay partnership of it.
Got another question just on front towards the left.
Hi. With the selection of the businesses that you chose, was there any backlash from rival businesses or competitors that weren't selected, and how did you manage that?
It was difficult. It wasn't something we anticipated, to be honest. Initially we were trying to sell this to businesses because it was a completely new concept. And as the quote there, we were telling them we were giving them this for free, which seemed odd. So initially it was a challenge to find the right businesses and get them sold on it. But once it got going, like you said, we had competitors in the area saying, well, how come they get this and I don't? So what we did was the whole point of this exercise was to help businesses. So we then created other programs where they might not be on the digital advertising, but we would get them involved in the program to help them accelerate their business, to kind of appease them in a way. And what happened was, because we were changing the creative season on season, in these communities, there was only one or two other competitors. So we would say, okay, they're here for first season, but then next season you can probably take their place, But it was really healthy, none of these people, there was no animosity towards their competitors. The environment was, we're all trying to help each other. And it wasn't a case of, I'm angry that you're helping this business. It was more a case of, I need help as well. What can you do for me and how can I grow as well? So it was really, really positive in that sense.
Thank you.
We've got one question just on the end of that row there. Are you there?
Thank you. Just realised I'd lost my voice then. I'm quite interested strategically I'm interested in the process really, as obviously a lot of the activation and the EFL itself talks to a male audience generally, maybe a generalisation, you might set me straight there. But I'm kind of interested. It was a broad challenge that you had in terms of brand awareness and consideration of eBay. I imagine that's a very broad audience. Strategically, why did you make that choice?
You know, at the time, there was so much going on. Brands were getting, you know, lambasted in the press for advertising certain things, and we were being very hesitant. And the challenge to me was, football is continuing, and football is something people are really passionate about, and it touches so many people, you know, especially the 72 clubs that the EFL manage. Those communities are representative of everybody in the country, you know. So it was a case of, how do we use that vehicle to champion small businesses? And that, you know, initially when we were thinking about what we could do, we looked at music, we looked at all these sort of things, but it just felt right in that, you know, you wanted to see a local presence for these businesses and how that community could get around and support them. So we try to be as open and, you know, diverse as possible. And especially, this is why Alex talked about the FA and the other partners that we looked at. The EFL really embodied that vision that we had and that understanding of how we could activate from a local level nationally. And, you know, some of the businesses, Cheshire's Chest is the business that always stands out to me. You know, it's an all-female business, and we partnered them with the Marlow girls football team, which, you know, at the time when we made that link, it didn't seem as significant. When we went down there, met them, you know, it was incredible to see that they were supporting each other, as you said, in a male-dominated sport, but it was a female-owned business with a girls' football club. And the girls' football club part was, you know, under 12s girls were allowed to play for free, whereas the boys had to pay. So you've got this real sense of community and how football being the vehicle could really inspire people and make change. And as a brand, you can't ask for anything better than that.
I think there was also other specific ways that we made it ensure that it targeted as broad an audience as possible. So I mentioned She's a Baller as a media partner, but that was some of the activity we did that was actually extension almost to the EFL partnership last summer during the Women's Euros. So actually taking some of the England girls women's team down to some of the local businesses that we were partnered with. So there were ways that we made sure that it broadened out beyond perhaps the as you say, slight generalisation, but of the male audience for the EFL.
But just to add to that, when the partnership started, it was during the pandemic, and at that point there was a lot of activity that our clubs were doing within their local communities. They really were seen as the hub of their local communities at that point. There were vaccination centres. They were giving out. They were seen as food banks. Clubs were phoning up like people that were on their own just to make sure that they were okay and they weren't lonely. So during that time, it really magnified the fact that our clubs really are at the heart of the community and doing so much to help people get through like a really difficult time.
Fantastic, thank you. Unfortunately, we haven't been given a second half for this, which I'm sure the content's rich enough for that. And that gentleman there has literally just shown me a red card, so which is very apt. But just wanted to say thank you for joining this session. Thanks to the panel, and I'm sure you're around for conversations afterwards. So thank you very much.
One more thing.
Sorry.
It's, about 23% female to 70% male. So we're getting more.
No, thank you very much. And I'm not quite sure what the lunch arrangements are now, but it's presumably through that door and out.
Back to the...
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.